we could call the meeting to order, please. If Councilor Mercier will lead us in the council prayer.
Yeah, you can do that. I don't have my prayer.
Sure. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our fathers. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Would you please honor our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Councilor Matt,
Here.
Councilor Madonza,
Here.
Councilor Mercia,
Here.
Mayor Murphy,
Here.
Councilor Luan,
Here.
Councilor Broderick,
Here.
Councilor Elliott,
Here.
Councilor Kennedy,
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Before we get started, I just wanted to recognize Amy Pessia from the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, who has an announcement for us.
Thank you, Mayor Murphy.
Sure.
Thank you all for welcoming me to the meeting tonight. And it's a pleasure for us at the Merrimack Valley Food Bank to partner with not only the residents of Lowell, but with our city government and, of course, our City Hall employees. As many of you realize, this is a difficult time in our economy and our history, and our neighbors right here in the city are experiencing difficulty with paying their bills and having enough money left over to buy food. So we are conducting our annual spring neighborhood food drive this week, and some of you may have received an empty paper bag with a flyer attached to it asking you to donate non-perishable food to our neighbors in the city. What will happen is all of those bags will be collected this Saturday, March 24th, and brought to our warehouse on Broadway Street. There, it will be sorted and inspected and distributed to food pantries, shelters, soup kitchens, day and residential programs that serve individuals and families. Our member agencies, those food pantries, report that they serve over 60,000 people monthly who reach out to them for food assistance. So with your help and with the help of our fellow Lowellians and of course our neighboring communities, we'll be able to reach our goal of 50,000 pounds of food so that we can fill our shelves and fulfill the needs of our food pantries and thus our neighbors. So we appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about this today. And of course, with your partnership at City Hall here, we have a challenge that's been issued among the departments to collect food donations, and we're pleased that we've received some of them already because apparently there were too many for people to walk around. So we look forward to receiving the rest of those and to a successful food drive. Thank you again.
Thank you, Amy. And we do have a box in the mayor's office, so if any of you have goods by Friday, we're lagging a little behind the Development Services Department as well as the Treasurer's Office, so we'd appreciate the support. I'd recognize Councilor Broderick, who has something else.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just get some support for a motion to suspend the rules. And the purpose is I got a wonderful letter from first grade class at the Merkland School that they all signed, and they were being taught community participation to make things better, and they noticed some graffiti on a slide. So I did talk to the manager and Mr. Marchand. It's going to be taken care of, but I did want to show everybody the wonderful letter, and I'm going to go by and thank them for it, but I thought it would be nice to acknowledge them and their participation and their effort. So that's the the gist of the motion. I guess we should suspend the rules, and then I'll talk about it.
Okay. Motion to suspend by Counselor Mercia, seconded by Counselor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Counselor Broderick.
Thank you. Letter speaks for itself. Thank you.
Okay, well done. Counselor Mercia.
Mr. Mayor, while we're under the suspension of rules and we're speaking about the schools, I just would like to say that I went to the Stocklosa School this morning to speak about government, and the social studies class of the 5th grade at the Stocklosa were there, and their homework assignment this evening is to be watching the city council meeting on channel 99, so I just thought I'd like to say hello to them, and I hope we don't put you to sleep, but that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Laurie.
While we're under suspension of the rules, under the city manager's item number 11, there's a reappointing to the assessors board.
Yep.
We have some members here, if we could take that out so they could.
Sure.
I think they should stay for the entire meeting.
Well, they're your employees, so it's up to yourself. Motion by Counselor Laurie, seconded by Counselor Broderick. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. We have, under communication from the city manager, appointing Susan LeMay, the chairman, Joe Cohen, and Karen Golden, effective 7/1/12, to the Board of Assessors. In the interim, they'll remain in holdover status. Reading by title from city manager, reappointing Sue LeMay, the chair, Joel Cohen, and Karen Golden to the Board of Assessors. Mr. Manager?
Just by, Mr. Mayor, just a brief comment. Obviously, it's a show of confidence, I believe, that I'm appointing all three, and I want to thank them for all of their hard work over the years, and certainly worthy of reappointment. I will note that, the letter indicates, they're in holdover status until July 1st, or June 30th, at which time they'll be begin their new terms, and they'll be put on a staggered 3-year term. Ms. LeMay for 3 years in her capacity as chairman, Mr. Cohen by virtue of his seniority for a 2-year term, and Ms. Golden for a 1-year term, and then we'll get them. The effort here is to put everyone long-term on a July 1st to June 30th year, and also to correct some of the staggering that's sort of been lost with some of these appointments, and this is how we're going to, so the council will probably see this as we come in with other reappointments and appointments in the near future, as we try to clear up the problem of terms that has developed over the years and the lack of staggering in a number of these boards and commissions as well.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor.
Kennedy.
So these won't come back in July. You're making the appointments tonight for all three.
That's correct.
So even though you're calling them in holdover status, essentially, I mean, that's semantics, isn't it? Their appointment really is for 3 years and 3 months and a week, right?
Correct.
That's kind of, okay.
As we try to clear up what's happened over the last dozen or so years.
Thank you. Any further discussion? What's the wish of the council?
Move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Move for approval by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call, please.
Counselor Laurie,
Yes.
Counselor Martin,
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça,
Yes.
Counselor Mercia,
Yes.
Mayor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen,
Yes.
Counselor Broderick,
Yes.
Counselor Elliott,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just, I know I asked about this before. If we could just have them come to the microphone, just have the manager introduce them, just so the people at home can see who they are.
I think we got your feet the last time, so.
What's your name again? This is Susan LeMay, the chairperson of the Board of Assessors. Joel Cohen, a member of the Board of Assessors. What's her name? And Karen Golden, the other member of the Board of Assessors. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here. We'll move back to the regular agenda. We have under city clerk portion of the agenda, minutes of the city council, March 13th, and minutes from the public safety subcommittee, also of March 13th for acceptance.
So moved.
Counselor Laurie?
On the minutes for the regular meeting,
Yes.
at one point, it was during the discussion on taxing the nonprofits. I disclosed I was on the board of CTI, and it's not in the minutes. I would just ask if they could be in the minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
And same as Counselor Mendonça and a few others. Motion to adopt as amended by Counselor Mendonça, seconded by Counselor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the city manager's portion of the agenda. Communication from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Counselor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a response to my motion about notifying abutters when construction in the neighborhood has taken place to create or enforce a policy. And I see that there is going to be some notification, and that people will be notified by media, LTC, provide flyers and distribute them at the neighborhood meetings, and distribute flyers to residents along the streets with upcoming road work. The council will be notified about different things happening in different neighborhoods. So that's pretty good. I think that it's very important that neighborhoods are not kept in the dark when construction has taken place in their immediate neighborhood. I think it's very important, and thank you for responding to that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a motion I had made, I want to thank the traffic engineers for the work they did for stop signs at the corner of 6th and Reed and Topman and Varnum Ave, I'm sorry. There was one question I had. We brought up crosswalks on Boylston Street, and to put in a crosswalk, they said it would cost several $1,000s. But what it says here, and it's interesting, any new crosswalk must comply with ADA standards, which requires a wheelchair ramp at either end of the crosswalk, or if no sidewalk is present, a usable and safe shoulder. What the traffic engineer saw was the same thing I saw, people crossing at Berwick Street. There is no crosswalk there. The crosswalk at the bridge, I think, is unusable because you can't see the other side of the bridge. Cars coming over, especially if you're in a wheelchair or a scooter, you're going to be hit. If you use the crosswalk at the school, at the Pine School, there's no sidewalk across the street, so you got to go some way, and there's a curve there, before you can come to a side street to get off the road. And that was my question with Berwick. If we could put a crosswalk at Berwick Street, there's no sidewalk. There is a sidewalk on one side, but not on the other. And what the traffic engineer saw is the same thing I saw, was people crossing at that one location where there's no crosswalk.
What I'll do, Councilor, is I will, Mr. Mayor, what I'll do is we'll have the traffic engineer take a look at that, and we'll come back with some additional information on that.
Yeah, there is a sidewalk from Berwick down, and I was wondering if would you be in compliance if you just dropped the curb? But probably not.
You wouldn't be if you just did that, but perhaps there's some other action we can take out there.
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for the attention. Thank you.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, regarding Councilor Laurie's motion, what's the downside of not having it be up to standard? If it doesn't have ADA, I mean, Councilor Laurie wants to do this so that people can get across the street and kids can get across the street to the park easier. Without spending the money to bring it up to ADA standards, what's the downside of just putting a crosswalk in?
Essentially, it's a liability issue for the city.
Why would that be?
Well, if someone gets hit in a crosswalk that's not appropriate according to the standards, the state and federal standards.
What if someone gets hit at a crosswalk that is up to the standards? Isn't there still liability?
Not on the part of the city. There's liability to the person who hit them.
Yeah.
But there wouldn't be liability to the city. If we're telling someone to cross in an area that's not appropriate, then the city was potentially liable. The ADA issue is a separate issue that if it's not being done in accordance with the ADA, then that's that raises their, there's, I guess there's somewhat limited exposure perhaps, but there's, that's a federal law that we have to comply with. But we're interested in trying to find, this is one we've wrestled with for a number of years, what to do on Boylston. We've had this concern raised, various points, and it is a tough one for us to do. But we'll have we can have the traffic engineer take a ride out there and see what he can, if there's something that we could do. Mr. Bakey, if you have anything you want to add to that, you don't have to, obviously, but yeah.
Councilor Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, I just would like to know what it would entail, cost-wise, in-house-wise, to cut a curbing out and make it accessible by a wheelchair, handicap accessible. How hard is that? Do we not have a jackhammer? Do we not have the equipment that we can, contour it out for a wheelchair to go by?
I think that may in fact be the cost that's associated with this.
So what would that be? Could we-
The most substantial costs, I think there's two in this case. One is the construction of ADA-compliant handicap ramps, which unfortunately or fortunately is more complicated than it may appear to the average user, and therefore a little more expensive. And the second cost, I think, has to do in this case of what happens beyond the crosswalk, particularly I think on the far side, where some additional sidewalk construction would be necessary, because we're also prohibited from installing a crosswalk which basically crosses people to a location where there is nowhere for them to safely be as a pedestrian. So we would have to be looking at providing for some section of sidewalk in that area. But as I said, we certainly don't, I think neither transportation engineer nor anyone else here disagrees with the council's wish to see something happen there, and you're correct, the transportation engineer observed a fair amount of demand at that location, at least at the school day. So what we will do is have the traffic engineer get out there, take a look at what the minimum amount of work that we could basically get away with and be compliant with the law would be and what it would cost, and we'll bring that report back and we can talk about it at that point.
Well, if you could give me an example of how a crosswalk, how a curb cut from one side of the street to the other would not be safe. How would it not be safe?
Well, essentially that's what's needed, is an ADA-compliant curb cut, but then beyond the
I
curb
could see
ramp,
it.
you need to get up onto a sidewalk or
Well,
something.
I'm
that's safe.
sure that we wouldn't ask you to put a curb cut if you're going to cross the street and run into a tree.
Right.
So I don't understand that reasoning, what you're saying to me.
The concern that the traffic engineer raised is, in addition to not having the proper curb ramps, there actually is not a sidewalk or a safe shoulder area for people to walk on the far side once you've crossed the street at that location. We would have to, in order to be compliant, we would have to actually address that problem as part of the project. I don't know, standing here before you, the extent of that problem. That's what we'll have to get his input on.
Because for years, I have asked for a curb cut right at the cross, if there could be a crosswalk, right into the senior center. People go to that, I don't know if I can say market basket, and then they come right over and they want to cross the street, and there's no crosswalk there. And the reason there isn't is because there's no curb cut for handicap accessible, someone coming on a wheelchair, motorized wheelchair, to cross the street. So I'm asking again why I can't have.
But I think that on that there's other issues as well. It's very close to another crosswalk, and there's requirements that it be a certain distance from that, and also you can't have a crosswalk at mid-block. It's supposed to be at an intersection. See, the thing with crosswalks are that they're not just what you're basically, where you lay out a crosswalk is designed to be the safest place to cross the road. And if you put it at mid-block, it's not going to be a safe place to cross a road. And that's why the there's standards.
Then I
that-
guess you'll never have one on Boylston Street at Berwick, because that's not a intersection either. That's a mid-block as well.
That's why we want to take a look at it and see if, and make that determination. Which we're trying to be cooperative. We'll take another look at the senior center too, but, I mean, we know that one pretty well as well. That one, it's really an issue of the closeness of the other crosswalk and the mid-block issue. And you have the two, the entrance into the senior center and the entrance into Market Basket.
Do you think my seniors are going to come out of Market Basket, go all the way up the street to cross the crosswalk, to come all the way back down to go to the senior center? I don't think they're going to do that. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for them.
And we're trying to make it as safe as possible for them.
Well, I don't see how it wouldn't be, but that's a matter of opinion.
I understand.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick?
Thank you. I think we have 2 or 3 different issues flowing here. We've got the cost of the curb cut, which is probably not the majority of the cost, but we also have the fact that once you put a curb cut in, it's saying to folks, come on down, it's safe, and then we don't have anywhere for it to go. That's the real liability. Come on over, cross to the other side, and then go where? In the mud? If it's rainy out, if it's wet? There's no sidewalk there, there's not a real passable. I can walk down it, but I'm right on the street. You get someone in a wheelchair or someone with a disability that has an issue, and it's basically giving them, the false positive of, yeah, come on over, it's safe. The same thing with putting in the middle of the street. Councilor Mercier, I think I filed a similar motion maybe a while ago, probably after you filed it 3 or 4 times, but putting it in the middle of a block might indicate to the folks that are crossing that it's safe because they're standing on it. But if I'm driving down the street, I don't expect someone to step out in the street in the middle of the block. That's where people are going the fastest, and they don't expect people to come out. So that's, I think, where the safety issue comes in. Not so much the people crossing aren't aware there's a crosswalk, but people that are driving aren't expecting it. And if all of a sudden, in a busy street over there, or on Boylston Street, you're driving down the street, and all of a sudden, boom, in the middle of the road, in the middle of the passage, not the middle of the road, but in the middle of the length of the street, there's a crosswalk, and you're expected to stop. It could create more accidents, and people could get more severely injured. I was thinking, even if, I know we had, at some schools, the flashing lights, or maybe, I don't know if you could do some type of, I guess it entails a crosswalk, though, the button to move across, but something to slow folks down and make it a little bit safer. I mean, it's one of those difficult situations that it's inconvenient, but instead of coming out of the park and going right down Boylston, if you need to get to the other side, you have to go left and cross up at the intersection. It's not the most convenient thing, but it's the safest, and that's what we're here for, is really to make sure we do the safest thing, because the long run, in the long run, more people will get hurt by putting in the middle of the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so goes the problem at Boylston Street. If you cross at the lights at 38 and you're in a wheelchair, and you go up on the left-hand side, there's a sidewalk, but it's not passable by a wheelchair. You can't pass through it. They do have a crosswalk that in front of the school that goes to cross the street, but there is no crosswalk. They have one at the bridge. There's a sidewalk across the street, but it's in the middle of the street. And these are the problems that the city managers are talking about. So, I know what you're saying when you're talking about how tough it is, but this is just the whole street, and it's a mess. And thank you.
We'll be happy to take another look and then come back to you on that.
Thank you. Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this whole issue, we need not just look at the Boylston, the crosswalk and, the handicap accessibility, but we need to look at the whole area to be safe and look at the cost for that, and then come back to the council to see whether or not there's enough money to do that. We can't just do the Boylston Street and then, go nowhere. And surely, when you create a crosswalk and go nowhere, you create a crosswalk, and that's the liability right there. If you're not having it right now, you're not liable to it. But once you put it there, you're responsible, you're liable. So we may need to look at the whole area, not just the Boylston for crosswalk. That's what I suggest to do.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on council motion? Councilor Mendonça.
Yes, another item that we had in our packet was the management letter from our external auditor. And I believe generally it's positive. There's really nothing new. And we've addressed a lot of the older issues. The only new item is a result of an older one being resolved, which is adding the tailings and dealing with that on how you deal with, I believe it's uncashed checks and things of that nature. There are, however, two items that, and by the way, thanks for the spreadsheet to summarize everything. There are two items that have been ongoing as unresolved. And personally, what I'd like to see is moving forward, if those two are no longer shown as unresolved, that we're moving something there to resolve them, or that some progress is made. It looks like we're making a lot of progress everywhere else. There's only a few that are, progress is being made and not quite yet resolved yet. Hopefully those will be taken care of. One of these has to do with reconciliation of some individual funds, so it seems to be related to the reconciliation issue that we've addressed in the past. But hopefully these two unresolved items will be addressed so that there'll at least be progress made in the FY2. I believe this is for 2011. We're in 2012 already. So the next one we receive will be for 2012. And hopefully these will be addressed and some of the others will eventually be resolved to the point that we have a nice, clean management letter, that we don't have any of these issues that aren't something new, that either accounting standards have changed or something of that nature. So I'd appreciate if the manager wants to comment on it through the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for bringing up the management letter, and as you noted, and I appreciate that, there has been tremendous progress made over the last several years in clearing up a number of issues that related to our financial management systems, and I think that a lot of hard work by Mr. Moses, Ms. Wright, Mr. McGurl, and others in our finance offices. But we continue to have issues, a couple of issues that need to be resolved. And our goal is certainly a management letter that basically comes back and says, all is perfect. I don't know if that's ever entirely possible. It's what we strive for. At the same time, we also are happy to get the management letter. My philosophy certainly is happy to get a management letter to tell us how we can always do things better than what we're doing them. But those are our top priorities this year, to get those resolved and hopefully get an even better management letter next year. Thank you.
If I could just make a motion on this, if I could ask that the manager provide an update status on these unresolved items at the end of the fiscal year?
Actually, we'll try to get that even before then, but
right,
certainly by the end of the fiscal year we will.
If I could have them.
I second it.
Sorry, what?
I'm asking for an update on the status of these two items
Okay,
before the end of the fiscal year.
sure. Did you want that in the form of a motion? Or?
Yes, and
Okay.
second.
Motion by Councilman Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Councilor Kennedy and then Councilor Elliott.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through you to the manager or to Mr. Moses, I guess. The correspondence from Powers and Sullivan is part of a contract that was signed last year to clear up the problem in the treasurer's office?
No.
No.
This is our external auditor that each year does the annual audit, and as part of that contract issues us in addition to the general fund audit and the federal audit, also does the management letter for us.
Okay. The people that were working on that, they were up in Nashville. What was the name of that?
Melanson and Heath.
Melanson. So are we all done with Melanson and Heath? Are they?
They're essentially done with the work. There's a little bit in the transfer over to our staff that remains, but the bulk of their contract is done.
Okay, and was it $85,000 contract? I thought that's what you
It was
told me back.
originally 55, I think, but we had them stay on a little longer because the transition between the old treasurer and the new treasurer took longer than we thought.
Okay. And did they make, well, just if I can switch over to the auditor for a second, was it $85,000 all?
That's for the regular audit. That's not for the county.
How much was the Melanson thing? Was it 55 then?
It was approximately 55.
Okay. And so, when Melanson did it, they came up with problems in the treasurer's office too, right? Are they different from this?
Right, they actually did the reconciliation, finished up the reconciliation that Mr. McGurl had been working on.
Weren't they also supposed to make recommendations on corrections going forward?
They made recommendations on the cash book, the development of a cash book, and the actual turnover of the reconciliation process.
Okay. And so, what is the difference between what they did and what Powers and Sullivan has sent us?
Powers and Sullivan actually looks at management practices in conjunction with the audit of the entire city. So they're looking at financial practices across each department. Melanson and Heath was very specifically working on two things. The cash reconciliation between the banks, the cash book, and the general ledger, and development of a new cash book and implementation of all those things. The audit makes sure that we're not paying any bills that haven't been duly approved, that our purchasing practices are correct, that our record keeping is correct. They're looking at a much broader spectrum of issues.
Okay, and does the city uses Powers and Sullivan on a regular basis, or has for some time? And how much do we pay them annually?
85,000?
We pay them 85, and then another 55 for
Right.
Melanson.
Powers and Sullivan does the general municipal audit, and they go through and they make sure that the numbers all add up, but also they do samplings within each department, or they pull a number of invoices, they pull a number of bills. They just do a sampling across the board, and they're here for a period of time. There's a whole procedure that they have to follow in accordance with the requirements of auditors and requirements of our contract. And then they come forward with the management letter of items that they've identified that they would think we should improve upon. The Melanson and Heath's responsibility was to actually go in and do the nitty-gritty, going through all of the transactions that took place over a period of time to make sure that as Mr. Moses pointed out, that the cash book matched up with the bank accounts, which matched up with the general ledger.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. This is dated June 30th. I don't understand why we just got this management letter now, 9 months later, almost 10 months.
It's dated June 30th because that's the end of the fiscal year, but Councilor, I think as you know, the actual transactions that get booked to that year don't actually conclude until sometime in August or thereabouts, at which time we have to get the auditor in, they do their work. That takes place, that ends sometime in the November timeframe, thereabouts. They issue the audit. That's something, as you recall, we needed to have done in order to be approved by the Department of Revenue for our filings. That's no longer the case since we were taken off the watch list, which we were put on back in 2006. Then they put together the management letter, and they work with management over a period of a couple of months to go through the various items to get the management responses to what they found. They come forward with a number of different questions for us that we then...
Mr. Mayor, I understand the process. I want to know why it takes so long. I mean, we're almost 10 months after the close of the fiscal year, and we're just getting the management letter.
Yeah.
And, there's some significant findings, and in the past, this was readily available. I mean, and if it hasn't, well, in order to set the tax rate a number of years ago, DOR wanted the audit beforehand.
That's correct.
So I don't understand why does it take so long to come up with this management letter? And, you know, the recurring issues year after year in here, and it seems like we're moving at a snail's pace again this year. Monthly reconciliations, a material weakness, that's a significant finding. It's not just, well, you know, we're working towards it, it's significant, and they still are having trouble reconciling.
Counsel,
Unless,
that's not true. That's
well,
not
do you
true.
want- I'm just reading what the report says, Mr. Manager, so you tell me what our
Well,
auditors are telling us.
Well, I think, Counselor, I think you were here last fall when we went over this issue, and we brought in Melanson and Heath, and we identified what the issue was, that in fact, the city had, and I forget the exact number, $300-some-odd-thousand, I believe it was, more on hand than some of the records were showing. And that was all reconciled. Now this, as you pointed out, is dated June 30th, which means that the findings that they have were as of June 30th. They can't take into consideration the final resolution of that, which had been sitting there since 1998. So that occurred. They can't show that in the management letter because they only go up to June 30th. That will be cleared in the 2012 audit, because it's now been cleared up. And I think we all know that. There's certainly been discussions at city council meetings, there's been newspaper articles about this, and so on. As far as the time,
Mr. Manager,
as
can
far
I
as the
interrupt you?
time it takes
It's not
to
been
do
cleared
this,
up according
yeah,
to
I
this
just gave,
audit.
well, Counsel,
It's
I
not
think,
been. I mean,
Counsel,
they're
Counsel, I
citing
just
it for a
explained, I
reason.
think I just explained that that's as of June 30th, as you yourself indicated, because that's the date that's on the audit, because that's the end of the fiscal year. I also think we've made it very clear with the reports from Melanson and Heath that the matter has been resolved, but they can't show that in the Powers and Sullivan audit because that audit is through June 30th, and it wasn't finally finished until after June 30th, which we all are well aware of. And as far as the time it takes to get it out, I think I gave a very good timeline of how long it takes to actually prepare the audit. It has been moving at a snail's pace. In fact, I recall that when I became city manager, we had a meeting in the fall of 2006 in which we reviewed the management letter from June of 2005, and that was the first time the city council had seen that management letter. So I do take some offense that somehow the fact that we get you this management letter and this audit halfway through the fiscal year, or just a little bit past halfway through the fiscal year, is a snail's pace. We're well ahead of any audit that you received or any management letter that you received prior to this administration.
Well, if that's your opinion, Mr. Manager. That's not the case at all whatsoever, and you weren't here, so you don't know. The bottom line is this. It's not a little over half a year. It's 9 months. We're almost in April, so, I mean, I can count, you can count. That's 9 months plus. I just want to know why it took so long.
I think I explained that, Counselor, that the actual close of the fiscal year takes place on June 30th. The close of the fiscal year takes place on June 30th. The actual close doesn't take place until sometime in August, at which time we have to get the auditors in. They're not sitting there waiting for us to call them. They have other municipal clients that they're working with. They come in, they do the work between September, October, and November. They finish it up. I will say that most communities don't even have their audit done until sometime in January or February. We're on a tight timeline because the Department of Revenue did require, following the debacle of 2005-2006, that the city have their audit done by November, December, because they wouldn't approve the tax rate for the city of Lowell without having that audit in place. So we're 9 months into this fiscal year, but in fact, we're right in line with when other communities are receiving their audits, and as I said, it's only a couple months after the audit was actually completed.
Okay. I'd like to have this report forward. You know, it's almost insignificant. The significant things that we should be focusing are the findings in this report. I'd like this forwarded to when we have the auditors meeting and have a discussion as to where we are at, why we continue to have these weaknesses in cash reconciliation. I think it'd also be helpful for our new members of the council if they get a copy of the latest report from Melanson and Heath.
Is that in the form of a motion?
I did say I would like to have this forwarded, yes.
Motion by Councilor Elliott to have this forwarded to the last meeting in April. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Any further discussion? Councilman Donza.
Just to clarify, the auditor's work is done annually, and that's $85,000. The work done by Melanson and Heath was a one-time thing to fix an issue identified during the audit. And that's been completed, not ongoing. Thank you.
Correct. Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion under City Council motions and requests? Seeing none, motion to accept and place on file by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Being after 7 o'clock, we'll move to the general public hearings portion of the agenda. We have an ordinance amending Chapter 243 relative to the naming of squares. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, if we could delay this public hearing or recess this public hearing to the first meeting in April, because next week we'll have one of our monthly meetings. So if we could do that for April 3rd, that would be very helpful to us.
Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Mayor, that if we delay the public hearing, then we're going to have to advertise the public hearing again. But we could hold the public hearing and then just recess the matter until, which solves the whole thing.
That's correct.
That might be a better way to go, I would think,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
We'll read through it and open it up for...
I'm sorry?
We'll read through it and open it up for public hearing and recess. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Second reading by title. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 243, entitled Streets and Sidewalks. Article 2, Section 243-6, naming of streets. So we'll open it up for a public hearing for all those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor? We'll keep that portion of the public hearing open until April 3rd. We'll open it at this time for all those wishing to speak in opposition, in opposition, in opposition. And again, we'll keep that open until April 3rd. Councilor Kennedy?
I would just move that we recess the public hearing until April 3rd, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to recess by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have utility public hearings. First, from National Grid and Verizon New England, a pole location at Willie Street. Entertain a motion to open it up for a public hearing at this time. For those wishing to speak in favor.
Good evening. My name is Dan Damaris. I represent National Grid of 1101 Turnpike Street in North Andover. Now, pardon me, Mr. Mayor, which petition did you call first, sir?
This is for the pole location at Willie Street.
On Willie Street.
Yes.
On Willie Street, National Grid received notification from the owner of 100 Willie Street. They would like to do some siding on their house. In order to make that possible, National Grid needs to move a pole to give them the specified clearance they need away from our primary lines. We'd like to move the pole approximately 30 feet in order to accommodate this customer's request, and that's why I've come before you to speak in favor of this pole petition.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd entertain a motion to refer to the wire inspector by Councilor Mendonça, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor? Councilor Broderick.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if now would be a good time to maybe ask the representative if we can get someone from National Grid. We've had a couple motions and some discussions on double poles. Maybe set up a meeting while we have someone here, Mr. Manager.
Sure.
I think what Councilor Broderick is referring to is we've been having some discussions with Dave Gendel from National Grid regarding the issue of double poles, and
yes,
we just want to make sure that we've had meetings and some discussions with them, but we want to make sure that there's progress made on the removal of the double poles across the city. How many do we have? 419 total. 194 ready to be taken. 194 ready to be removed. So we'd like to see some progress on that.
If you're speaking with Mr. Gendel, then you're speaking to the right individual.
Okay.
He's the contact point, and he is the one who'd be able to drive that for you.
Okay. I think in terms of the administration generally supports the National Grid Verizon poles coming forward, as we see it as essential to the development of the city. But obviously, we need to see the progress moving forward with that. And I guess we're just asking you to bring that message back, that pole locations in the city would be, the administration is going to have a difficult time bringing those forward in support without some progress on that. So if you could just perhaps bring that message.
I'll relay the message to Mr. Gendel.
Thank you. Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mayor. If possible, if we could have a timeline to remove those double pole, 194 of them, to give us a timeline from the National Grid, because, it said, okay, we're going to speed up on it, we're going to remove it, but there's no timeline. So I'd like to see timeline on that in terms of getting the 194 pole removed. If it's a year, 2 years, give us a timeline and submit it to the manager and pass it along to the council. It would be good to have the timeline.
Councilor, each double pole is a unique situation, and I can't possibly speak to 194 unique situations. As far as an exact timeline, I'm unable to give you that answer at the moment.
Okay. Councilor Martin?
Well, I think it's actually more than 194, right? We think there was 194 that are ready.
Exactly. It's
Right?
419.
400 plus that still are various stages of being disassembled, but it's 194 that are ready. They may not all be national grids. But, a timeline is one thing, but progress is, all right, we're going to do 10 a month or 20, that some sort of concrete, measurable form of progress, I think, is what we would like to see.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, what's the state law say to get the double poles out? How many days?
There isn't actually a requirement in the
I
state
think that's
law.
being worked
That's
on.
being, there is a piece of legislation that the council has asked us to draft up a vote for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor to approve this pole location, or excuse me, actually to refer it to the wire inspector.
So moved.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next week, again have from National Grid and Verizon New England, 3 pole locations at Middlesex Street. All those wishing, open it up for a public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor.
At 1765 Middlesex Street, National Grid received a request from Walgreens Corporation in order to, they wanted to develop that site, put in a new store for them. In order to accommodate that request, National Grid needs to rearrange our pole line in that area. We're going to be removing several poles and installing a few in order to reroute the line in order to feed that new business, the Walgreens, going in at the location that is known as, I think it's 1765 Middlesex Street.
Thank you. Any more wishing to speak in favor? In favor. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. We'll open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd entertain a motion again to refer it to the wire inspector by Councilor Mendonca, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you. Moving back to the communications portion of the agenda, we have a communication from the city manager. Request approval for out-of-state travel, 1 for the Lowell Fire Department and 2 for the Lowell Police Department.
Motion to take them all up at once, together.
Second.
Motion to take all at once by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Roll call, please.
Councilor Laurie?
Yes.
Councilor Martin?
Yes.
Councilor Mendonca?
Yes.
Councilor Mercia?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen?
Yes.
Councilor Broderick?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy?
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have a vote authorizing the manager to apply, accept, expend a grant up to $20 million from the Federal Department of Transportation's Tiger Discretionary Grant Program to support the design and construction of significant infrastructure improvements to the downtown Lowell Transportation Evolution Program. in City Council vote authorizing the Division of Planning and Development to apply for, to accept, and to expend funds from the Federal Department of Transportation's Tiger Discretionary Grant Program for up to $20 million to support the design and construction of significant infrastructure improvements to the Downtown Lowell Transportation Evolution Program. The Downtown Lowell Transportation Evolution Program seeks to combine a number of proposed transportation infrastructure improvements outlined in the Hamilton Canal District Master Plan and the MEPA Environmental Impact Report and the city's comprehensive master plan as amended and the Downtown Evolution Plan by Jeff Speck. And these various infrastructure improvements are described more fully in the attached March 15, 2012 communication A. The total cost of this project is expected to be approximately $32.4 million. The city anticipates funding the project from a number of sources, including the Tiger Discretionary Grant, but also the Paul S. Sarbanes Transit in the Parks Program and other contributing public and private matching sources. Be it voted by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows, that the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell and acting through the Division of Planning and Development be and hereby is authorized and directed to apply for, accept, and expend funds up to $20 million in Tiger discretionary grant funding. The acceptance and expenditure of these funds shall be subject to actual receipt of the requested grants. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, authorizing Division of Planning and Development to apply for, to accept, and expend funds from the Federal Department of Transportation's Tiger Discretionary Grant Program for up to $20 million to support the design and construction of significant infrastructure improvements to the Downtown Lowell Transportation Evolution Program. What is the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Noon. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is a pretty significant grant. I mean, is this a realistic possibility? Have we been invited to apply? Do we have some sense of where we're going to be in this? Or
It is a significant grant, and the council may recall that we applied for a similar amount a year ago, and the response we received is that we did very well. It is competitive, but the Department of Transportation was very impressed with the comprehensive proposal that we submitted, and they encouraged us to reapply this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councilor Martin on the size of the grant. The total cost of the project's going to be $32.4 million, and it says here there's going to be other funding. Would there be any city money used, or is most of it going to come from other funding?
Mr. Bakey.
Of the 32 million, 20 million of it approximately is the request to the federal government under this particular program. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4 million that's already been awarded from another federal grant program. We have another million or two that's been awarded through other programs we've applied to over the years that we're applying to this. We have some of our local CDBG funds which will be going into the pot. We will be applying for a state grant that will also act as a match in a few months that would align with this. And then there is some hope that the Lowell plan will be able to assist us in raising some private contributions to support it as well.
So out of the $32 million, really no city funds being used?
That would be the goal. It is possible also that we may look to put a small amount of, to seek a small amount of city funds to close a final gap, but the goal is definitely to try to do this without getting.
Congratulations, great work. I mean, that's a lot of money.
We haven't received it yet.
No, but just to be on target for something like this, it's great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kennedy.
When would we hear about this? What's when is the award supposed to be made? Do you have an idea of that?
They haven't provided a definitive schedule, but all indications we have is that they will be likely making announcements this summer about this program. The sort of federal electoral politics of it suggests that they will almost certainly be making announcements before the fall.
Before what?
Before the fall.
Okay, and so And how much of the community block grant money is being dedicated to this?
Well, some of it is money that's already been awarded to a couple of, to projects related to the Hamilton Canal District, but it will be in the order of a few $100,000.
Okay. If we're not successful, then that money could be rededicated, couldn't it? Block grant money?
Some of that money has been, we try to be a little bit clever with the way we package up the match to minimize the amount of match we need to seek. So what we've essentially done is we've taken some projects that are funded, incorporated them into the scope of the grant to allow them to count as match for a federal grant request that is not for things that are not yet funded. By combining them into a single project, we can count that as match. So if we are unsuccessful in obtaining the larger grant, we still are able to proceed with some of the smaller pieces of the project with the funding that's been awarded. So it isn't that funding like the CDBG or some of the Paul Sarbanes money that we already have or some of those other things, those projects would still proceed. But while we have the opportunity to use them to count as match and try to leverage a much bigger grant, we can do that. So it isn't that failure to get this will mean there's a lot of surplus money sitting around. It'll just mean we're going to do a smaller project.
I didn't think that it meant that there'd be a lot of surplus money, but my question, I guess, was if we don't get any money, because it's up to 20 million, right? I mean, you could get an amount lower than that?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
that's not uncommon that they would do
Okay.
that.
So my question is, would we need to dedicate some of the community block grant money if we were unsuccessful? That was what my question was. It wasn't that I thought there would be a surplus, it's just, but money is tight, and so if it's just a few $100,000, that's money that could be used for, other items in the neighborhoods, rather than for this. I guess that's my...
I think I let the manager answer too, but what I'm trying to explain is that the money that we have allocated as match, including the community development block grant money, is assigned to a project. And that project and that money will proceed, and that money will be spent on that project, whether or not we receive this larger grant. We have combined that project with some other projects that would be paid for with this grant. If we do not get this grant, we will not be able to do those other projects. But what we will not have is CDBG money that we can reassign to something else, because we will still proceed with the project that the CDBG money would pay for.
Is this community block grant money from a previous fiscal year?
But a good bit of it is, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, I didn't understand that part of it, I guess. Thanks.
Any further discussion on the vote? Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bakey. That was a good explanation because it answered, I think, a few of the questions I had. Would it be possible, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager, if we could get maybe an update on, we have a list here in the Exhibit A of 5, some of them substantial items that we're doing that are in conjunction with the Hamilton Canal project, as well as what we consider traditionally the downtown improvements. And maybe just get an update as to where the funding is on each of these. If we already have $2, $3, $4 million from different grants and the work's going to proceed, if we could just get maybe an update as to which ones are earmarked to be taken care of and which ones are, pending the 20 million or whatever other funds we get. I think that might be helpful for us as well. Okay. Thank you. But congratulations and bird dog in this, and hopefully we get lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the vote? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Counselor Lowry.
Yes.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Madonza.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Broderick.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have in City Council vote declaring surplus property located at 812 Gorham Street, Lowell, Massachusetts, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, for the disposition of said parcel, namely 812 Gorham Street, Lowell. The city of Lowell is the owner of the property at 812 Gorham Street, Lowell, Massachusetts, having acquired this parcel under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, subsection 15A, on September 19, 2007, and by a letter dated March 15, 2012, the city manager has recommended that the city council authorize the Department of Planning and Development to seek a proposal to purchase and to include therein a minimum proposal of $265,000 based upon the appraisal prepared September 23, 2011. Be it voted by a 2/3 vote that the City of Lowell property at 812 Garment Street, a total lot area approximately 58,750 plus or minus square feet, is hereby declared surplus property and not presently needed for municipal purposes. The city manager, acting through the Department of Planning and Development, is hereby authorized to proceed with the disposition of said property under the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, and to include therein a minimum proposal price of $265,000, and to also include required notification to all abutters pursuant to the Code of the City of Lowell, subsection 60-2. Be it further voted that the request for the proposal shall contain such other terms, restrictions, and conditions as the city manager deems are in the best interest of the City of Lowell. Second reading by title. In City Council vote, declaring surplus property located at 812 Gorham Street, Lowell, Massachusetts, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, for the disposition of said parcel, namely 812 Gorham Street, Lowell. What is the wish of the council? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you look at this property, 812 Gorham Street, it's valued at $1,054,100. That's what it says in the assessor's database, that the land is valued at $194,500, and the building is valued at $859,600. Now, I know that the building is not, it's worthless, and I know that there's a cost associated with demolishing that, but I look upon it as a different, because I see they'll be tearing down valuable bricks. Bricks to the average person probably don't look like a big deal, but if you know about historic value and old bricks, they're very, very valuable. So although you're tearing down an $859,000 structure, you're tearing down more or less a gold mine, in my opinion, if you know about demolition. And people would be willing to buy those bricks, depending on how, whole they are, and people could, well, you're a mason, you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Mayor. So when I see the value at $265,000, I think that I would have went a little bit higher, just to see if we would have people bidding. And then if we didn't, then I would have probably lowered it to that. I think I would have gone higher. That's my opinion. And having said that, it's a TMU zone, traditional multi-use. Multi-use being residential, but it's a gateway, there's commercial. I hope that when we finally get a bid and it's most advantageous, that they decide that it'll go commercial. I hope the advantageous part of it is that it does go commercial. I think we need to add that to the base of our tax base. There could be a development there, there could be businesses there.
Mr. Baker.
We completely agree with you, Councilor. That property's been identified as being potentially attractive for commercial development, given its proximity to the connector, and its visibility and its size. It's a fairly large property. So it is our intention, as I think was identified in the cover letter, that one of the most important comparative criteria in the RFP would be job creation. And a project or a proposal that has permanent job creation, essentially economic development, of some sort of commercial nature would be definitely weighted highly advantageous. We absolutely agree with you on that front, Councilor.
Well, I didn't want to mean job creation in the demolition aspect or the building aspect. I want permanent jobs created there, so that's a good thing.
We agree.
I don't know how we could raise that price a little bit. I know that many times you have come back with other projects and you the bid was higher, and we didn't have any bites on it, more or less, so then it came in at a lower, I wish we would have done that on this one, to go a little bit higher, see what we could have gotten. Then maybe, I don't know, is time of the essence, or, I mean, it's been only standing vacant for how many years? I don't think a few more months would have made any difference, but, I mean, I wish it would have been a little bit higher than that, but that's my opinion. Thank you.
And just to clarify also, it was mentioned in the cover letter that, that the highly advantageous is for permanent jobs as opposed to advantageous for the temporary work. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is, there's some interesting potential here. I think the key here is, you know, there was an appraisal done. They came in at 265. I think that's where the number came from. The assessors database, although we like to think that it's accurate on most properties, I think that there's a difficulty here that it's been vacant for a number of years and it's literally falling down. But there also is a cost of labor that far exceed, I think, the value of the brick. But in any event, so I'm okay with the 265, although we don't have a copy of the appraisal. I had more of a kind of a question as to how this, it's going to go out to RFP, and I don't know what the city's involvement can be or has been in terms of looking at the map here. There's obviously a large parcel of land behind it. The Princeton, I don't want to say Princeton property, the old
Prince
Macaroni.
Prince Macaroni, and I don't know who owns it, who owns, if there's one owner for all of it, but if there's been discussion there in terms of, you know, using this as a way to open up into the back there. There's some private property there that might make it a little bit of a challenge, but and I don't know how, if we can get into that in this process, but as I saw this, I just thought I'd ask, and if it's something we can't talk about because it's going out to bid, that's save it for another day.
There have been a variety of discussions regarding access to the back property and other uses that could happen there. There is some interest, and I think as far as the bid price goes, I do think that there's some value there, certainly for someone, and whether it be the bricks or the land itself. And we're hoping that the price is such that it is based on an appraisal. We're hoping that the price is such that we'll get a number of bidders that drive the bidding up, so we get the maximum amount of money for that.
Good. Thank you. Councilman Donza.
Well, I'm glad to see we're finally moving ahead with doing something with this site. Right now, it gets the city $0. It's just sitting there idle. And if this goes through, and maybe the bids will be higher, which would be great, that's the amount of money we'll get for the property. But beyond that, whoever buys it will have to deal with what's standing there now. They may have to demolish or rebuild, whatever they want to do to redevelop the site. That's going to be a lot of dollars that they're going to spend on that site. And after they've done that, it'll have some value that we'll receive in taxes. Most likely commercial, could be residential, but most likely commercial, which I think would be ideal. And we'll have gotten rid of a major eyesore in one of our major streets. And I think this particular property is holding down that segment of that street, that neighborhood. And once this is redeveloped, I think that entire mini neighborhood will be greatly improved. So I certainly want to move forward with this, and hopefully we will have someone or multiple bidders that'll get us even more than the appraisal. But at least the appraisal, I think, would be great if we could get that amount. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
I just have a question. The way it's designated, does it have to go to the highest bidder, or where we're looking for commercial use, can we go for commercial use if they're not the highest bidder, where we're looking for jobs and economic growth?
The basic two choices that are available to the council when it wishes to, or the city in general, when you wish to dispose of property, are to put it out in basically an auction type format where it is just all about the money, and you have no control over what necessarily gets developed, other than you can set sort of minimum standards that everybody has to meet, and then it's just a matter of what the maximum price, whoever that may be, whatever they may propose to do within those standards is. The reason we typically choose to go the route of an RFP is exactly the reasons you're suggesting, Councilor, which is to give us some other criteria upon which to evaluate proposals, so that if indeed, a proposal that may be $5,000 less, but far more consistent with other objectives of the city and may yield much better taxes down the road, far more than the 5,000, we have the ability to select that proposal over the one that may have been 5,000 higher, but was really not a very positive proposal for all kinds of other reasons.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. Mr. Becky, one of the reasons why I think this building is sat idle for such a long time is the historic restrictions on demolishing or developing it with certain criteria. Is that still going to hold firm depending upon the proposals that come back?
Well, there's actually two primary reasons that it has been in the condition that it's in for as long as it has. One was that it was under the control of the school committee and the school department for an extended period of time, and they actually had a plan at one time to reuse the site for an elementary school that ultimately was not supported and didn't go forward. It was only a few years ago that the school committee voted to declare it surplus, and therefore at that point it became something we could consider. The other issue is indeed the one you raised, Councilor. That's correct, that the historic status of the building, it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, does limit what can be done with it if one is using either federal money, state money, or requires a permit from either a federal or state agency. Typically, when the city does demolition, we don't use city money, we use grants. We use federal grants or state grants. That's why we can't demolish it using any of those sources. So if the city were to have chosen to demolish the building, we would have to use city general fund taxpayer money or borrow the money for it or something like that. So we didn't get into that realm. It would also cost us more than it would cost a private party. If a private party wished to have the site clear for redevelopment, it would be cheaper for them to demolish it themselves than it would be for whatever we would have to pay for it. And they would be under a similar set of requirements with respect to the historic status. They can't, if they need or want to use a federal funding or state funding, or if they want to use, if they require for whatever reason any kind of state or federal permit, they would also need to deal with or mitigate against any adverse historic impacts. If they don't want to do any of those things, then they're basically free to treat it as anyone else would their private property. It is not locally designated as a historic structure in any design review district where we would have any kind of Lowell Historic Board review over the property.
So any state credits, any investment tax credit, any state or federal assistance would trigger that historic requirement.
Yep.
So as you mentioned, a private developer comes in, they can demolish it at their own cost, and then essentially do whatever they want. Okay, good. Thank you. That was helpful.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the matter? At the same time, I'd have to leave the room as I'm maybe in a butter, considered in a butter. And so if Councilman Dodson could take the roll call in this case. Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, if the clerk will call the roll.
Need a motion.
Motion to approve by Councilor Broderick, second by Councilor Noon. Roll call.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy. Councilor Nuwan.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
8 yeas, 1 absent.
If the mayor would resume the chair.
Thank you. Moving on, we have a vote. Each City Council vote authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to accept a gift from the Highland Sports Association of $1,500 for use by the Parks and Recreation Department. Be it voted that the city manager is authorized in the name of the City of Lowell to accept a gift from the Highland Sports Organization of $1,500 for use by the Parks and Recreation Department to purchase sod for the baseball diamond at Lou Craft Field and associated installation costs pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A. Further, that the city manager will convey the city's appreciation for the donation. Second reading by title and city council vote, authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Lowell to accept a gift from the Highland Sports Association of $1,500 for use by the Parks and Recreation Department. Move for approval by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next, we have in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days. The City of Lowell desires to make temporary rules regulating traffic under actual conditions for a period of 60 days. In Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations, authorizes the City Council to make temporary rules for a period not to exceed 60 days, be it ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows. Effective immediately for a period of 60 days, the following temporary traffic regulations shall be implemented. Subsection 266-47, stop intersections, is hereby amended by adding the following: stop sign on Topman Street, direction of travel south at the intersection of Varnum Ave. Second reading by title in City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266-6, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are implemented for a period of 60 days. Which was the council. Motion for approval by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Roll call, please.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a communication appointing Councilor Rodney Elliott as the elected official representative to the Disability Commission.
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call, please.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes. Mr. Mayor,
Yes. Councilor
Yes.
Kennedy.
did Councilor Elliott submit a resume?
I'm
I
sure that...
withdraw the question, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Just fooling around.
At least he's here.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Councilor Elliott, for...
The meeting's on Tuesday night?
Not this Tuesday, no. Next, we have reports, subcommittee reports of the Transportation Subcommittee from today, March 20th, to Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold going. The Transportation Subcommittee met tonight at 5:30 here in the chambers. Present was myself, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Mendoza, Councilor Noon, and Councilor Mercia. And we had asked the DPD to come back and with some recommendations on signs, the place cards in front of the homes that say "Do not park." And they came back with three real standard. One is when you pick up the sign, the space will say 20 feet. You're going to be told you only get 20 feet. The second would be it's 20 feet and can't read my own writing. Oh, if you don't have 20 feet of space, you can't have the sign. You have to have 20 feet of frontage. And you also need 20 feet You can't have one if there's a fire hydrant or if there's any other reason that would violate a traffic law. And the signs are going to have to be securely placed on a pole or somewhere on the home where it's visible from the street. A couple of more suggestions were sent in. One, a list of locations in the what's considered suburban area, and how many signs are there and where they're located, to see if the ordinance is even needed in some areas. Another idea was a fee structure and colors of place cards if we wanted to do it annually, have a fee annually. And also, look at one-way streets. If we should even have these place cards for no parking on one-way streets, and because it would be unfair to the person on the other side. That's about it. It was a great meeting. The DPD did a great job, and that's the results. Excuse me again, I've barely talked with the upper respiratory problem.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Mercia.
I would move that that we accept the report as a report of progress.
Motion by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Excuse me.
Before I accept that, was there a little blip there about Lawrence Street?
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a question on Lawrence Street, parking in front of 26 and 28 during the winter months at night from midnight to 5 in the morning. And the traffic engineer's response came back, they're gonna look at the designated areas to see if they're even needed at this point. They may just drop them. They're called emergency routes, and they may just drop them. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion by Councilor Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a report of National Grid and Verizon New England pole location for Pawtucket Street near University Ave and Father Morrisette Boulevard. I'd entertain a motion to accept and adopt the accompanying orders by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have under motions, motion by Councilor Laurie, request the city manager have proper department look into expanding recreational programs and costs associated with that.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Broderick. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion's response to what kind of summer programs we could have this summer. Years ago, we had park instructors. We may have a boy and girl at every park, baseball games, basketball games, and things of that nature. And the idea is how much it would cost us to go back to that type of program, how many parks we could do, maybe even include the pools and the cost, what it would cost to open the pools, and generally just see what kind of programs we could have this summer in the parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just would like to voice my my support for Councilor Laurie's motion. I think that you know, if there is money available, I'd like to see the park recreation department program beefed up for the summer. I think that it has benefits for all the children in the city, and those benefits are not just for the year, but they're residual. And so if we can beef that program up as much as possible, then I would be in support of that come budget time.
Thank you. Councilor Broderick and then Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great motion. I think the timing is very well. It's very well timed in that I assume you're going through the departments and getting budget information together. So I think it's a good direction for us to give us to say, look, you know, it would be important to beef it up. It does have long-term effects, positive effects, and it's great for the neighborhoods. And we do spend a tremendous amount of money and resources on the parks, maintaining them and improving them. So I think it's be a great use. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we could refer that motion to the Parks and Recreation Subcommittee and address that as well a little bit further, come back with a report as to what his motion is all about, I would appreciate that.
Sure. Mr. Manager.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, we are in the process of working on the budget right now, and we are putting together a plan, and it's been an effort that we've had over the last few years during very difficult financial times to try to hold on to what we have with the Friars of Recreation program and yet expand it at the same time through alternative means of looking to outside groups to come in and help us bolster that. This year, the request that I've put forth to the departments is to try to do more of that in-house and try to expand that. And Council, we should be able to have something along those lines probably within the next month or so as we work through the budget, and I'd be happy to come forward at that time with that.
That's fine.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? In that case, all those in favor of the motion as amended, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Mercier. Request the city manager find a way to increase lighting on Lee Street and on the corner of John and Page Streets. Seconded by Councilor Mendonça. Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had some discussion about the happenings in the downtown and how we can make the businesses more compatible with the public and the residents that live downtown. That was a great big part of having, compatibility in the downtown, being a business, but as well as being a residential area. And having said that, there's another component that's involved with that as well, to make it more safe for the public, not only safe with the businesses that are producing some sort of a product that could rile people up, but it's a little bit more than that as well. And the other component is the fact that there's particular areas in the downtown that are a little bit dark. And this is the area that people are concerned with. Lee Street, the lighting is very poor there. The corner of John and Page Streets. This is the feedback I get from residents that live downtown. And we're going to address the downtown situation. We might as well look at the whole picture. And this is part of the whole picture. And I'm referring to the corner of John and Page Street because it's the area of the old Union National Bank parking lot. Very, very dark area. I wouldn't really know that because I'm not even down there in the darkness, so I really wouldn't. I'm going by what people are telling me because this motion addresses that concern. People email you, they call you, they tell you, so they know what they're talking about. They live there. So I'd like to remove that darkened area and, as they say, let there be light. So that's what I'm trying to do because bad elements lurk in the dark, and I don't want anything like that happening. So that's the gist of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Councilor Elliott.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to request a point of personal privilege. I want to take this opportunity to thank Diane LeMay for her 16 years of service in the mayor's office. I came on at the same time that Diane did when she was hired by Councilor Donahue, Mayor Donahue, and I've always found her to be a hard worker. She was a dedicated employee to the city. Many people may not know who Diane is, but you may have seen her many times as Lowell Bear throughout the years. She volunteered hundreds of hours to the city. She was available anytime I ever needed her. She was available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She never said no. In a moment's notice, she certainly would step up and did whatever it takes to get the job done. So I understand it's your prerogative, Mr. Mayor, to hire who you want. I spoke to Diane shortly thereafter or the next day, and she was upset I think she was more upset because she was told that everything was going to be okay. And then you let her go. And again, I understand that's your prerogative. But I just think it could have been handled differently. I don't think it was very professional the way that it was handled, Mr. Mayor. Someone that has worked for the city for 16 years and volunteered volunteered hours and hours. I think we could have done something. I think we could have given her a send-off. I don't understand why it was handled that way, why she was escorted out, and her keys were taken, and her computer was locked. And I don't understand it because you didn't call me, Mr. Mayor. I understand you called other members. So that's why I don't understand it. And why is it you call, and it's my question, Mr. Mayor, is why you call some members and not other members. I don't think that's professional either. So that is a point. I want to thank her. I wanted to express my gratitude to her, and I don't know if it's appropriate, but I think I'd like to send her a letter of thanks on behalf of this and prior city councils. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to concur with everything he said. I completely agree with Councilor Elliott. I know that it's called protocol, but there's many ways of going about it. I really want to tell you how much I appreciate the hard work that she did. She had broken her leg, had a cast, and came to work the next day. I think that's dedication. I've talked to her many, many times, and she treated me as if I were the mayor when I wasn't. I really miss her. I think it wasn't handled properly, but we all handle things differently. I just want to publicly thank her for her many, many years of dedicated service, and I wish there was another transformation that took place and put her from one department to another. I don't like the newspaper using the word firing, because it almost made it seem like she did an egregious act and got fired for it, and she wasn't fired at all. She was replaced. There's a big difference with that strong word of firing. I took exception to that. Other than that, I want to say thank you, Diane, for all the work that you've done throughout the years, and you were my friend, and you still are. Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, this is going a little bit beyond a point of personal privilege, but I think it is certainly appropriate to offer personal privilege to thank Diane Banowski now for her many years of service to the city. She served in the mayor's office when I was mayor and did a very good job for me, and I made those comments publicly to the people that have asked. She certainly was very capable at the things she was good at. I had the luxury of having two people in that office, but I don't want to get into the mayor's prerogative or the reasons the mayor did things or why he did or didn't do certain things. I think it's certainly appropriate to thank Diane. I think we'll all miss her and thank her for her good work here in the city.
Thank you. Councilor New.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Diane, she's my friend. I knew her for a long time before I ran for council. She's still my friend, and I know she has done a lot for the city of Lowell in her capacity as the assistant to the mayor, and to you and to the former mayor. I want to echo Councilor Martin to express my thanks, and maybe we can send her a letter to thank her for the work she has done for the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to thank her. She was helpful when I was vice mayor, and I think she treated us all like we were the mayor. and we clearly weren't, but I do understand it's the mayor's prerogative, and, you know, often there's 3 stories here, and I think that it's good that the high road is being taken, and we can move on. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I will say in response to the councilor's comments that it's clear from them, Councilor Elliott is not privy to what actually happened, and but I'm not going to begin discussing a private personnel matter here on the council floor. I don't think that's an appropriate forum for it. So if there isn't any further discussion, motion to adjourn by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.